In conversation with Jackie Borling. Jackie Borling chose to go to the University of East Anglia, aka UEA, over Oxford because she wanted to study creative writing at a place that is world renowned for it. She did a BA in American literature with creative writing, choosing this to avoid Gawain and the Great Knight and all the very old books from 2002 to 2006. Then did a master's in studies in fiction, reading and writing essays about experimental literature from 2006 to 2007, also at University of East Anglia. Since graduating, she's done various type of jobs, mostly in the writing or journalism field. She usually has about five part-time jobs and prefer it that way. She likes almost all books, but loves books that make you think, that make you feel, or check something in you. In 2009, she was shortlisted for the Escalator Award for New Writers, and in May 2022, Writer was published by indie press Story Machine. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today, Jackie Borglin. How are you
Hello.
doing, Jackie?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I had quite a lazy day. Did a bit of work, not much. Didn't want to overdo it.
It's very nice, really, to have you on the show today. Quite exciting. We're going to be having a conversation around your book. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Jackie, I need to mention that I found the description page of your book, Writer, to be quite captivating and compelling in Amazon. Plus, its name alone speaks a high level of interest. Very captivating, I need to say. Just like I'm about to ask you now, what do you say to people when they ask you what your book is about?
It's really funny actually because I have a tendency to make jokes about it.
Mm,
So I tend to kind of go, ah, yeah, it's about an evil vampiric typewriter that grants wishes, and people
well,
kind of look at me and go, what? Um, I mean, it's actually to me, it's about much more serious things. It's
mm,
about kind of loss and running away from pain and things like that. But
yeah.
I don't like to depress people, so I just tell them it's about a typewriter. It's like a vampiric typewriter. And I tend to tell them it's a gothic Western horror, which again, uh, must sound like a weird mix.
Mm,
But I think it interests some people. Sometimes they're like, "Oh, that sounds interesting,"
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a beautiful one, yeah. A gothic waxen aura. Sounds very amazing, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me as well, I mean, I think it was in a way for me the subject matter and kind of the things I was feeling at the time
Mm,
made it horror, made it because I mean it sounds a bit pretentious, but I was in a depressed mood. Some things happened and some of what I was feeling was horrific in a way,
mm,
that might sound, dramatic, um but it's weird because I don't read horror. I
mm.
don't watch horror. I get scared very easily, so I cannot watch scary films. So I
Well,
don't really know how I ended up writing this, to be honest. But
interest. Wow, that's quite amazing to know, really. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. And just for readers who haven't read the book yet, and of course, without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what you would expect in terms of themes, in terms of subject line, picking up the book?
yeah, I'm quite glad that you're asking only about themes and subjects and things
Yeah.
because I can tell people roughly about what happens, but I very much don't want to give anything away.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, in terms of the themes, it's funny because like when you read my intro, I love books that make you think, and I hope that I've written a book that makes you think a bit as well. And I mean, I did all sorts of musing myself in the writing. So, I mean, a
yeah.
lot of it is actually think about love, and what is love, what makes a good relationship. One of my
Mm,
friends who's a writer, but also a man of faith, which I personally am not, but he read it and
mm,
he kind of could feel a lot of debate on that side as well. And he kind
wow.
of looked at me and was like, you sure you're an atheist? I was like, yeah. He's like, are you sure you weren't questioning it? I was like, yeah, no, I'm sure. But he was just, that was his take on it, was that I was having some kind of crisis of non-faith.
Mm.
But yeah, like I said, loss as well, running away from pain, that kind of thing. How you deal with those kind of things, I think,
Oh,
are the
wow.
main things. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. I enjoy it. And if you have a copy of the book, they'd like you to show it to the camera, just so we see what it
Yes.
looks like.
There you go.
And that's such
But
a beautiful cover and very uncommon. The color combination. Would you like to talk about how you came up with this concept for the cover? Or it's a designer thing?
Well, do you know what? It's actually a minorly dramatic story in
Oh,
that I had a friend who had made some illustrations for it, a very, very good illustrator. Um, basically we'd always agreed that he'd share sort of 50% of the profits, and he very much knew that it may well never get published and that profits would probably be 10p. And then so then I had this publisher, Story Machine, and we were literally probably, not long, a few weeks from going to print, and he suddenly
mm,
turns around and demands 8 grand for the pictures.
wow,
Uh, so we went, no. So the
wow,
poor designer who'd already designed a cover using one of these illustrations,
yeah,
utter miracle worker. He
wow,
turned this round and kind of came up with this new design.
interesting.
Um, yeah, so sorry, yeah, a bit of an intriguey story there, but fair enough. I understand my friend wanting to be paid for his work, but unfortunately, we couldn't do that. So
Mm,
um, so this cover was very much not what I was expecting for a long time, but
mm,
I like it. If you kind of look very closely, it's kind of hard to see,
yeah,
but it includes um typed. It's got bits of the written text, typed text, and because that's the idea is about this. I mean, another of the themes in a way is writing and the process of writing and stories, and also how our lives are. We kind of shape who we think we are by the stories we tell about our lives.
mm,
So it's got these kind of written and rewritten like layers and layers on the cover
wow.
of writing. And yeah, it had to be read because blood. So
That's
yeah.
That's quite amazing, really. I mean, I love the incorporation of these themes and subject line in the book, and the fact that you even mentioned a bit about this too really made for an interesting discussion. Thanks for sharing. Yeah,
Thank you.
and again, I wanted to ask you because the book is quite poetic in nature, and I need to mention that as a poet myself, I love reading books, right? Love reading writing. That the writer's style is a bit poetic. I'll be like, oh wow, the imagination, the figurative expression, the expression, the lines, it's so beautiful. Yeah. Now your book writer is quite poetic in nature. Could you tell us how it came out that way?
Yes, it's well, can I tell you, it's I've always been very interested in rhythm in writing. I think rhythm conveys
Wow.
emotion. As a poet, you'll know this,
Mm,
repeated sounds, pace, those kind of things to me are so
absolutely.
important. Um, and actually, when I write, I'm very lucky that I can type as pretty much as fast as I can think, or as fast as I can speak, certainly.
Mm.
Um, and this next bit I'm going to say will make me sound a little bit mad, but you prepare yourself. So when I'm writing,
Yeah.
it's almost like there's like a screen in front, like a I think of it as a filter that gives me a
Mm,
tone of voice. It gives me the tone of what I'm writing.
absolutely.
And the words just come. Like I know for a lot of writers, or I think for a lot of writers, they carefully think, what word shall I write next?
Yeah.
They construct it. Whereas for me, it's just like a river. It's a river
Wow.
coming from somewhere in me through this tone that gives it the tone of voice.
Mm,
And I think because I'm feeling the emotions, it comes across in the rhythm of the writing, I believe. And I mean, certainly this novel, there were a lot of similarities to the way I write in general, but it was something different. It came out differently to my other writing. It's
mm,
much more kind of sort of think of it as like flowery, almost overblown in a way, in the way it's written. So yeah, it's got elements of the way I write, but it's certainly its own thing. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I love it. I love when writers, there's a novel I read, I think 3 months ago. The writer's style was so poetic. And I was like, when you read, as a writer myself and as a reader, I'm not quite sure if this also pertains to most reader, but as a writer myself, I'm a huge lover of words. I love it when a particular line captures me, reads so beautifully. And you were like, oh wow, that's such a beautiful expression. I mean, you read the line and you find it to be very amazing. I love it. I'll underline it, put my, or what's it called, bookmark, and go back to it later and said, oh wow, I love that beautiful line. It's so beautiful. And that's why I love incorporation of poetic. What I find, because most novelists, some novelists, not all actually, some novelists are so good incorporating poetry. Not really poetry per se, that was line and stanza, but then the way the lines, their sentence has been written, it's written so poetically that you come out, that's so sweet. That's so beautiful. I'm a huge lover of words. When words are placed side by side, the positioning, the expression, the figurative expression, the description, it's just so amazing and very lovely. I'm a huge lover of poetic, devices. Yeah.
Me too, me too. And it's really funny with writer as well because I'm not, sorry, I'm just flicking through it. I'm not a very visual person.
Oh,
Normally, I don't have a very good visual imagination. But this,
yeah.
again, it came to me partly in pictures. It was very, so yeah, there are things where again I kind of again it was brought to life, and I think
Wow.
the rhythm for me and the words, it was very important, and it's
Wow.
very, I think that's maybe why it's quite metaphorical. It's quite the character, the voice that was speaking, that I
Oh,
was
that's so
writing
beautiful.
is very, very poetic and very, he doesn't say things literally or simply. He uses
Wow.
as many words as possible just to
Oh,
do
wow. That's so sweet to hear. That's so amazing to hear. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah.
it.
Now, Jackie, one of the most interesting things to me as a writer is to listen to readers' feedback. And you may want to agree with me that one of the things that make literature to be complex in its entirety is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers, based on their opinion. Sometimes the readers might get the message intended by the author. Sometimes they might be close to getting it. Sometimes they might be very far away from getting it. And sometimes they might hilariously misunderstand the entire message. As interesting as hilarious as it sounds, I would like to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your works differently than you intended? Love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, it's very funny actually because one of my friends,
Yeah,
she read Writer. Um, See, it's difficult. I don't want to give away too much
yeah.
because but let's just say she thought it had a happy ending, and I was like, really? Like, because in my opinion, it wasn't. And like, we didn't have an angry argument, but we debated this. I was like, but no. She was like, she stood by her view. She was like, no,
Wow.
this is the. And I was like, really? Um, but then I could kind of see where she was coming from, in a way,
Mm,
but. So I do think, in a way, I mean, you may have heard of, was it Barthes, Roland Barthes, who talk about death of the author. You
absolutely.
can't control it when it's come out there.
Yeah.
I think, I think I like it in a way.
Mm,
I like seeing something new in a text. So
yeah,
even if it's something I wrote, I don't know how you feel about it, but
absolutely.
sometimes people tell you something new about even your own stuff, and it's nice. Like,
I
yeah.
love your take on that. I remember asking one author, and he was like, "Oh, it's a wonderful experience." When you tell me that, oh, this is what you're trying to do in the novel, I'm like, "Oh, really? I had no idea. That was okay. But it's fine. I love to hear your take on that. That's very amazing." So it's a very fun, and as somebody who has written books myself, when I hear people tell me that something very different from what I'm like, really? Well, it's fine. I mean, it's beautiful and it's always very soothing. Such a beautiful, fun experience that even sometimes can get you laughing and smiling. Oh,
Mm.
wow. Well, I never meant it that way, but it's lovely to hear your take on that. And I think this is one of the beauty of writing. You can have millions of writers interpreting your works differently, suiting it to what way it best fits them, and
Mm.
just judging it on their own perception. I think it's a very fun thing, and
Yeah.
perhaps it gladdens the writer.
I think so, and I think it's funny because I think writer my novel it contains lots of various thoughts on different themes.
Mm,
Like sometimes I think of it almost carrying, obviously not every side of thing, but it thinks about things from lots of angles, and so in a way, I hope that maybe it might get people to think about things in a new way occasionally, but
mm,
also just that hopefully everyone can get what they want or need from it. I mean, I need, not like it's
absolutely.
gonna, fix you or anything, but just something nice from it.
It's a fun one, really. I love your take on that. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. And I'd like to ask you, Jackie, your book, Writer, wasn't entirely structured in a normal way. Writer isn't structured in a normal way. Why not? Yeah, I just want to hear your take on this.
Why not? Yeah. So I mean, if I just give you like a quick example, so
Yeah, love
there
that.
are 80 chapters. There are 80 chapters.
Wow.
The first chapter, I really ought to know this bit changed so often. The first chapter is the prologue. The second chapter is chapter 86.
Oh,
The third chapter is, I believe, chapter 140.
wow.
The fourth chapter is chapter one. Um,
Mm,
why? Just because? No, no, actually, no. There was a reason for it. So basically, in a way, it felt right, but also the what I said earlier about the way you think. We are telling stories about our lives
mm,
the whole time and who we are, and
mm,
and I often think that when you are stressed, or I found when I'm going through something difficult, I chew over it. I go over and over and over and over. So it's
mm,
like, although chronologically I'm going forwards, my
yeah.
mind is circling and circling and circling.
Evolving.
I don't know if you've experienced, but it's so in a way that's kind of what I wanted to do with writer is
Wow.
although it's nominally going forwards, it's like there's lots of flashbacks in a way because
Mm,
and it's sort of associative like this thing leads to it and it just I wanted to kind of hopefully viscerally show that kind of mental disquiet I guess because I yeah that's sort of what it
yeah,
yeah.
that's amazing, Jackie. That's very amazing. Yeah. Now let's talk about inspirations and ideas. I know we've a bit touched into this, but yeah, I'd still like to ask you. I've always been fascinated, taken aback, surprised by how authors, especially novelists like yourself, would sit down and craft long sentences and bring words together in a way that sentences makes paragraph and paragraph makes pages and pages make chapters and chapters coalition come together to make a great novel like you've just shown to the camera in Name of Writer. And this always leave me thinking, how were you able to create these words? How were you able to bring these sentences together? How were you able to get this paragraph rolling to chapters to pages, and you have a big novel that keep transitioning in a beautiful, lovely way. I mean, it's
Mm.
very surprising. I know it speaks so well of the creative writing craft, yeah. But then I still like to
Mm.
ask you, as far as writing is concerned, how do you get the inspirations and ideas to continually write a book that transition beautifully? Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, and it's funny because I think in a way there's maybe two sides to that question. So
yeah.
where do you get the ideas from? So the ideas themselves, I don't know. You might know a film. I don't know. You may well have heard of this film called Empire Records, from like the 90s, and they have this line. They say, "Who knows where thoughts come from? They just appear." Um,
Randomly.
just randomly. I mean, I suppose where things come from in terms of writer, like I said, I sort of was emotionally in a bad place. I had the feeling
Mm,
of how I felt. Um, I think the initial kind of part of the inspiration was I'd just read Stephen King's Dark Tower series. So I think that's where this kind of westerny element came from.
Mm,
I love my favorite book ever is The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, and that's
mm,
Gothic. So I think that element came in, you know, the Stephen King element came in, my emotions came in, and then I know what scares me. I would very often write this late at night and then be lying awake going because I just scared the bejesus out of myself.
oh, wow.
So I suppose in terms of that, like you know, the scary images. I mean, I don't think it's probably for most people that scary, but
Mm,
in terms of that, I suppose I maybe there's certain things that I knew were scary, but in terms of writing a novel, this started out as a short story, a long
yeah.
short story of about 6,000 words.
Mm,
Um, I took it to a creative writing group, you know, got some feedback, paid a kind of local publisher to kind of, you know, read it and critique it.
yeah.
And he sort of said to me, this either needs to be shorter or longer, but I feel like you want it to be longer. And he was right. I had more to say.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, I mean, I think doing it in stages. I don't think I could have at that point just written a
mm,
novel straight off. I had to kind of build up my writing muscles, if you see what I mean. I also needed a subject where I had enough to say. But you know, I
mm,
think um but I also, I mean, in terms of how I write, another reason why it's so chronological, so structured so strangely, and I should say the chapter numbers refer to when it happened in the story. So
mm.
chapter one is the beginning chronologically of the story.
Wow.
And like chapter 141 is chronologically quite near the end of the story.
Mm.
That's kind of sorry, well, I'm rambling on. Yes, so in terms of how I was writing it though,
Yeah.
uh, I very often wrote it on my phone. So I'd have like my phone and a keyboard,
Wow.
and
Interesting.
I'd just have an idea, and I'd kind of go, okay, for like a scene. So almost a bit like in films, you know, you have a scene, a short segment.
Yeah.
And I'd come up with this idea for this little short segment, and I'd open the file, and I'd literally do that, like scroll up, and I'd kind of scan, and I'd be like, yeah, I think it should go there. That was it. Like, I was like, I don't know about that, but yeah, instinct is probably an annoying answer, but instinct
Mm.
is in terms of the order of things. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's very amazing. And it's very surprising because sometimes I'm speaking with different writers, like, well, I don't really know where they're coming from. I can't entirely tell. It's as if I wasn't, perhaps I was sleeping when I was writing the book. But sometimes when I go back to the book and I hope, like, did I really wrote this? Like, when was I writing this? I had no idea. Because it's even surprising to you as a writer that you could pull up such an amazing work out, from
Mm.
somewhere you'd be like, where are they coming from? I think it's one of the things that make creative writing to be such a beautiful, talent, a beautiful skill, an amazing creative journey. That's amazing to know. And I enjoy
Yeah,
you talking about how you get yours too.
it's a wonderful kind of feeling to write, I think.
Absolutely. Sometimes I feel like it's a bit spiritual. I can't really tell where it's coming from.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, yeah. Now, apart from writer, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Well, so nothing published at the moment. I mean, I randomly self-published some kids' book,
Oh,
which I
wow.
illustrated, but that was, that was for just for fun. Um, but I've got kind of various projects that are in various states. So I've got one novel which I'm currently intermittently, when I have time, at the stage of sending it around to try and get an agent, which is um the idea is that a writer writes a novel about a woman who's experienced sexual abuse and has repressed
Oh,
memories of it. And the writer realizes that she's using a lot of her own experiences to write this. And so she ends
mm,
up thinking, has this happened to me? Because, like,
oh,
this, I'm using so much of my life in writing this book. So again, I
oh,
wouldn't want to kind of give too much away, but that's sort of the theme about that. The one I'm mainly working on at the moment, which has somehow got to like 92,000 words and is in a big mess.
interesting.
Um, Big mess, but it's about the idea is the rich people who rule the world realize there's no way of stopping climate collapse. So they
Wow.
perfect cryogenesis, shove themselves in a freezer, and with a cult to look after them and leave everyone else to starve and die. And that's the
Wow.
kind of, and it's funny because I feel like as I'm writing that, like more and more things keep on being like, oh, that's a new story. It's in my fiction as well.
Wow.
Which is
That's so
interesting.
fun to say, yeah. That's such an amazing what you've got there. Well done.
I like to mix it up. Let's not write the same kind of thing all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'd like to ask you, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? I know that with different writers, it might vary, especially if you're writing a different genre. For a poetry writer, it might be a different experience. For someone writing another theme of memoir, it might be a different experience. For someone writing an historical fiction, it might be a different experience. For a comic writer, it might be different, yeah. So it differs with different genres that you're writing on, particularly as a writer. But then I'd like to ask you, what could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? Are there any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing the book and also ever since you've got published? And also, yeah, for the second part of my question, how do you handle criticism as a writer? I've got two in there already.
Yes, so yeah, in terms of kind of challenges as a writer, I mean, I think I was very lucky in the publisher that I got, Story
Wow.
Machine, because Sam, I mean, Story Machine is mostly a one-man band. It's Sam,
Oh,
and he put a lot of work into helping me, the writer. You know, we must have redrafted it sort of two or three times
wow.
after he'd done that, and I think I was very lucky to get that. Um, and I think that's one thing is that in terms of, I feel like a lot of the time when you're trying to get published, you know, you're expected to have a maybe not completely finished work, but I think I was lucky to get that support.
Yeah.
Also, he very much allowed the book. I mean, it's weird. It's a weird book. It's a niche, let's say, very niche book. And he let it be that. You know, in his redrafting, he didn't force me to write it in a normal way. You know, he didn't.
Mm,
He let it stay true to its style. So I don't know. Obviously, I don't have experiences of other publishers, but
yeah.
I was grateful for that. You know, um,
Interesting.
having said that, it's a small publisher. You know, it's a small publisher. Story Machine was at that point quite new, and
Mm,
I think one of the things we found very difficult, which is why I'm so grateful for people like yourself, was getting publicity because you can't buy a book, no matter how amazing it is, if you haven't heard of it. If you don't know it
yeah,
exists, you know, you can't, you know,
absolutely.
I know there's, you know, word of mouth and things can slowly grow, but you can't. And we contacted quite a few kind of bookstores,
Yeah.
didn't hear anything in terms of doing talks. We contacted, I mean, Sam contacted quite a few people for, you know, doing reviews, again, heard nothing.
Mm,
Partly it was to do with having the time to chase, but I think also it felt a bit like it's who you know, if you're established and if you know the right people, you I don't know, give them a cake and get a review, or just say hi and you've got their email and you can. I don't know how it works, but that you can see my bitterness. That was difficult. That was difficult, and
mm,
I think I very much believe in the book, but I think
mm,
you know you have these dreams of becoming super world famous and everyone bowing at your feet and saying you're amazing,
absolutely.
and it hasn't happened. I'm so grateful to be published, and I'm so when people read my book and say nice things, I bask in it gleefully. And but yeah, but I think it's hard when you're a small author. I think it's hard when you're independent, and I
Yeah,
think I get very bitter and jealous about all the people who are already famous who may or may not have written a good book. I don't know, I haven't read them,
yeah,
but they
absolutely.
automatically or very easily get published
Yeah,
because I guess the publishers don't have to do as much work to promote the book, which I guess it
absolutely.
makes business sense. But one day I will go around those people's houses and to be like, ah, at them because it's yeah, destroy my
Yeah,
book.
yeah, absolutely. That's such a great one, really. That's such a great one. I enjoy you talking about it. I love your take on that. That's very educative as well. Yeah, very educative.
Mm.
Thank you so
and
much for
and
sharing.
angry. No, not that angry, but just yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up for today, is there anything that you'd love to share with the viewers about your books? We did not mention in this interview, and I'd love to viewers to know.
I mean, I suppose the only thing I might want to say is that my good friends Elizabeth and Jameson, they're well, Hannah and Griff, they're musicians. They
Yeah.
worked with me to write to make an audio version of it.
Oh, interesting.
It's 6 CDs, although I'm busy turning it into an audio book, but I just need to sort the file, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it was always very important to do that for me because to me it should be heard. I mean, I think read it as well, please read it. But like
Mm,
we were talking about the rhythm, I had to make an audiobook version of it. I wanted to, and I read it because I know the rhythms, that I know how it should go. I
mm.
don't put on a very bad Southern American accent. I'm sorry. It's just, I
Oh,
should have tried, but I don't. But yeah, that's maybe the only other thing I might say is
that's very
at some
amazing.
point. Yeah.
That's very amazing that you've got an audiobook in there, even in CD version. That's beautiful.
Thank
Will
you.
that one be
Thank you.
available for purchase too? Do you sell them too? Is that one available
So,
for
so
purchase?
yeah, I mean, these I made myself. I sell them myself. At
Oh,
some point, I need to. I haven't got them on a website, really, although you can. I think you can go to Story Machine, and I believe, list them there.
order a
If
copy.
not, you can just get in contact with me on, Twitter or whatever like that. And yeah,
Interesting.
I'm working on getting it released as an audiobook,
Yeah,
online.
yeah.
I just need to um they've got very strict requirements, obviously, for file, peaking and
Yeah,
troughing
could
and
you show
sound,
to the
all
camera
that.
much better?
Oh yeah, sorry. And these so there's 6 discs. I
Mm.
did these linos and I designed the
Oh,
covers. It was quite fun. But
beautiful.
yeah.
That's amazing, Jackie. That's very amazing. Yeah, yeah. Now let's
Thank
get your
you.
advice for other writers, because some might be watching this and they're looking forward to becoming an author like yourself. Yeah, what sort of advice would you give to people who are still struggling with putting their thoughts together, with perhaps they've gotten a book written and they are looking forward to getting it published? What would you advise people in this category? And also, where can interested readers get a copy of your book?
So the first question. So in terms of if you're trying to write a book and a
Mm,
novel, like you said, for me, I did it I started as a short story and then it got longer and longer and longer.
yeah.
In the back of the book, I rather ridiculously, one of the people I thank is Dory from Finding Nemo, because
Oh,
the whole time I was just like, just keep swimming,
oh.
just keep going, because I find it's very easy to get overwhelmed with like, this is a massive thing. How can I ever do it?
Mm,
And so that's probably maybe for those who are trying to write something, maybe that's what I want to say is
mm,
just keep going. Don't be afraid. Even if you write a sentence or two sentences, and that's all you've done, you've done something. Um, for those who have got something that they're trying to get published or
yeah.
trying to get an agent, whatever, I haven't got an agent. I haven't yet. I would love one, but I was able to be published without an agent, so that's maybe
Well,
one thing. And interestingly,
yeah.
my friend Ian, who I mentioned earlier, he had an agent. He's had an agent for a long time,
Mm,
and at, he's hopefully going to have something published soon. But he had an agent for 10, 15 years and wasn't published. So maybe that's one thing, is that an agent's not the be all and end all. I don't know. I haven't solved that problem myself yet, particularly. I think it was just kind of luck that I knew, I met Sam, so maybe luck. There you go. Networking, luck. Having a book that you've written helps.
mm,
So that's something. And yeah, in terms of people trying to get hold of a writer, I find this is going to sound ridiculous. Well, obviously, I Google myself on regular occasions because I
wow.
like to, and I Google writer, and it keeps on popping up in more and more countries. I mean, in terms of, I think it's all just online and digitally, and if someone actually randomly happened to buy the book, they'd have to get it posted from England. But if you Google writer and JM Burgoyne, have a look at all the countries it's in. It's in like Japan, it's in Russia, it's in Portugal, like it's in everywhere. I just kind of sit there going, well, like there's a new end bit. Um, I fully don't think anyone's bought it in any of these countries. I don't know what's happening there, but yeah. So I mean, it is on Amazon as well. Uh, Yeah, just Google it, you'll find it. There you go. That's not very helpful, is it? But yeah.
That's really amazing. I love your take on that. That's very great. And yeah, it's an amazing one. Yeah. And I left a link also in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Jackie books directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles, on our website, and also on other platform. I also left links to social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Jackie, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's awesome, and it's actually more than awesome having this lovely conversation with you around the beautiful title, Writer. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh.